All right, we are live. Hey, everybody. Rex Bear, Leak Project. How the heck are you? Hope you're doing fantastic. And look who it is, Darcy Weir. It's been way too long. And luckily for us, he just came out with a recent documentary that I am looking forward to seeing. I've got a ton of questions for you, and it's just hot off the press, so I haven't even had a chance to see it yet. I'm going to watch it after this podcast, The Psychic Phenomenon. And Russell Targ, is it Richard Smith or what's Paul Smith?
Paul H. Smith. Yep.
Yeah. Paul. These guys are the cutting edge, like the top of their fields with remote viewing, actual sanctioned remote viewing, where there's certain protocols. It's not just imagining something in your mind, totally different ball game. But the psychic phenomenon, I think that this is a missing link on many of these UFOs and UAPs. There's even a lot of information out there that describes the craft at Roswell that crashed being used via some type of telekinesis. So very interesting, very interesting. Now, folks, if you haven't heard of Darcy before, I guess you've been hanging out in a cave without internet. Darcy, you have like 24 documentaries, and some of these are even available on your YouTube channel, which is Occult Journeys. Ladies and gentlemen, subscribe to Occult Journeys. It's an awesome YouTube channel. But I've been following your work now for about 10 years almost. Yeah, since about 2015. Yeah. And, you know, your most recent work, The Psychic Phenomenon, but also Puerto Rico's UAP, Pascagoula 73, Dark Alliance, which you all need to watch this, folks. Dark Alliance, the inside story of the Cosmic Con.
Really Did you watch that?
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that's hello. It's about time somebody came out and said, look at these charlatans out there and how they've been profiting off of just ridiculousness and then getting other people to follow. Wow. I'm glad you did that. Good job. So how have you been?
Good, man. Good. Happy to be back here chopping it up with you, bud. How you been?
Been fantastic. Been doing great. It was interesting. Just a few days ago, there was a search and rescue. Now, this is really unfortunate, but I got a chance to see how everything works. I'm in Colorado. Couple elk hunters go missing. And so I see a Facebook post, this is where they're at. And if you could help, if you're in good shape, please come out and do so. And I get out there, and there was a couple of dozen, I think all the way up to like 36 crews that went out, a lot of volunteers just looking for these elk hunters. And unfortunately, they passed. They got struck by lightning. And so we were all trying to figure out, did they get stuck in the elements? Because there was bad weather when they went out missing, but they had all the gear with them, like the GPS tracker and all that kind of stuff. And there's two of them. They're in good shape. They're in their mid-20s. And, there's all sorts of ideas that go through people's minds, like, how is that possible? But the most recent article that I read today is it was lightning. So,
wow. You find them deceased?
Well, they were found deceased. Yes, unfortunately, my friend Diamond and I went out looking for them for a couple of days, and we didn't have any luck finding them. But that makes more sense than we're like, why would two hunters that are in good shape, that you could get stuck in the elements out there, but it just, a lot of things didn't make sense, like with their GPS kind of stuff. So if they did get hit with lightning, then instant, like. Wow. Anyway, it's terrible. I met one of the moms. She was out there just being real nice to people. And
yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, but that you're like an explorer. You're always out there, man. You're getting off the beaten path. I like that about you. That's pretty cool. And to follow, folks that are trying to find missing hikers or missing hunters, like, that would be quite the fun adventure, even though it ends with some tragedy.
Yeah. It was terrible. And it gets real when you meet the family members. That's when it really kicks in. But anyway, I mean, so be prepared, not scared, count your blessings. And I learned how search and rescue works. So, there's a lot of cases that are like people calling missing 411 cases and stuff like that. And I think a lot of those can probably be explained away, but there are those very mysterious circumstances sometimes. And I don't know, have you ever thought about getting into the missing 411 stuff, the phenomenon with that?
Totally. I love David Polides' work. I think he's, the man when it comes to following up on these national park missing cases. And sometimes they find them, sometimes they're alive, sometimes they're dead. Pretty wild stuff, I mean, I think the only stuff that I've done that's kind of like adjacent to that are the Bigfoot docs, like The Unwanted Sasquatch and Sasquatch Among Wild Men. And the interesting thing is that David Polides is actually really well versed in that whole phenomenon, like the cryptid world. And when I was working with this company called 1091 Films that kind of screwed over a bunch of different filmmakers, I remember speaking with the guy who was like kind of co-producing one of the missing 411 stories with David. And I was like, oh man, like I would love to talk to David sometime. I read his book, The Hoopa Project. He's really got to do more missing 411 stories that are like Bigfoot based or Sasquatch based, same thing. And the co-producer guy was like, oh, please don't tell him that. We don't want him doing that. We only want him to focus on the UFO stories. And I'm like, why? Like,
Yeah,
that's kind of dumb, but whatever.
right. Whatever. Yeah. So sidetrack there. Very interesting to say the least, but like the whole Bigfoot phenomenon, I want to believe, yet it's like one of those things. Like I've got a friend that's a chiropractor that says he swears he saw one when he was a kid in Kansas, just in the cornfields, and he swears he saw one. So, and I know he's not making up a story. I said, what do he look like? He said, he kind of looked like a linebacker. I was like, wow, a hairy linebacker. So I was like, okay.
Hairy line, big guy.
a big guy. So very interesting. But yeah, that's a side note. And thank you for bringing that up. And also, folks, if you want to check out some good Bigfoot docs, check out Darcy Weir's Bigfoot docs. But let's get into your most recent work with the psychic connection. Like the CIA and the DIA were doing psychic experiments, weren't they?
Yeah, totally. I think with this story, I started where, like, kind of the origins of ESP remote viewing, and then we go from there and start to talk about the UFO and the non-human intelligence connection to ESP. And like, is this a universal language? Are we able to eventually give up using our mouths and flapping our gums and teeth to speak? And do we just do mind-to-mind connection in the future? Like that type of thing is where we go at the end of the doc. But we start off just like doing chronological, historical telling of how remote viewing came to be and formal ESP research. And I got permission from the Noetics Institute to use some of Dr. Edgar Mitchell's, the Apollo astronauts, testimony about his consciousness and ESP research. People may not know, but he actually like did the very first ESP tests of his own on the way back from the moon during the Apollo 14 mission because he had time. Astronauts very seldom have free time when they're in space. Everything's like checklists and, we got to do this next and do this and prepare this. And so it was rare and he had that time and he carried out these Zener card tests, which people don't know what those are. They were started by a guy who did actually the very first research into ESP. There's an institute out in North Carolina. What is his name? It's he went to Duke University. It's coming to me. But this guy, if you ever see the movie, the opening of Ghostbusters, I believe it's Peter Venkman that's torturing this guy with an electric test. He's kind of like got this guy set up to nodes and he's presenting these cards. They're either a square, a triangle, wavy lines, a star, and a circle. And basically, those are Zener cards. The Zener cards were invented by JB. What's his name? It'll come to me, but
Sure.
that guy's research, essentially, when Russell Targ was a young boy, I think 13, he read this guy's book on ESP research. So Russ was always interested in this for a long time. He had just finished building a massive laser for NASA,
Okay.
a practical laser, you know, something that could like cut through objects practically.
Okay.
And he was approaching NASA for his next project that he wanted to get funding for, which was the remote viewing and ESP research. While he was at NASA, Dr. Edgar Mitchell comes walking by. He introduces himself, takes part in this conversation, and says, yeah, I would like to help you with that. I'm actually going to be working at RSI, the Stanford Research Institute, as a contractor, and I can probably bring you over to start working if I can convince them to contribute with this whole funding. And that's how it started. So yeah, we interview in the doc Chris Ramsey, who runs Area 52 investigations. He did some pretty cool docs on YouTube about remote viewing and his adventure into this phenomenon. And we include Paul H. Smith, who was the guy that took over Ingo Swan's remote viewing school and still teaches it practically today. And he'll even say some of his clients are intelligence or military linked.
Yeah.
We go over Ingo Swan's story in detail and, you know, show some pretty cool stuff from him historically and his theories on the non-human intelligence connection. As many people may know, he did a remote view of the moon, and he was warded off by non-human intelligence. Yeah. And
Can I jump in on that real quick?
Let's jump into it.
The name of that book that he wrote on the dark side of the moon that he remote viewed is called Penetration. And
Penetration.
I've got that book, and it is so far out that it almost seems like science fiction, but he doesn't come out and say it's science fiction. And so I think I asked Paul one time, I interviewed him like 5 years ago. I said, what do you think about that book and that remote viewing? And the way that he responded, he didn't give a definitive answer, and I which is totally cool. What do you think about that with the research you've done? Because it's far out. I mean, he claims to have seen naked dudes on the dark side of the moon in a green mist mining the moon.
Yeah.
So it's wild.
And I think they weren't, I don't even think they were human, but I think Paul H. Smith is open to it because he's basically familiar with the UFO phenomenon and the over and over recollections or testimony from contactees and experiencers who've either seen a UFO and had telepathic communication with just that experience, but also they've been aboard the crap sometimes, right? And when they're on board, they meet these non-human intelligences, and they're usually communicating mind to mind and stuff like that. So Paul H. Smith talks about Ingo Swan in the documentary and what Ingo Swan's theories are and how, essentially there is a non-human intelligent contingent out there of some sort, and they may not want to be revealed to the rest of the world. They may be kind of manipulating and manufacturing our reality with the powers that be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So did you talk about the penetration book in the doc?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I mean, like Tracy Garbutt Dolan, she's a remote viewer. She's, been a part of the mystery school's teachings for many decades. And she is well versed in all that. And we discuss what Ingo discovered on the moon. And, one of the things that's interesting about that whole thing, after he was detected by this non-human intelligence, he said he was warded off, pushed away from that area, never allowed to go back. And something that's discussed a lot now in the UFO community, especially with Skinwalker Ranch becoming so popular, is this idea of the hitchhiker effect. You've heard of that, right?
Oh yeah. Where like you see something or you're in an area and it latches onto you and it follows you.
Yeah, people encounter that phenomenon apparently a lot at Skinwalker Ranch. And so I guess when you hear about Ingo's personal experience with this phenomenon, he basically describes that hitchhiker effect taking place after the moon. He was never the same. He felt like he was being watched all the time, kind of stalked, that type of thing. And I think he also encountered some interference, so I think it's cool.
Yeah. And what's even more wild, or I shouldn't say more wild because that's pretty wild, but it's also like the beginning of the book. So folks, if you haven't read this book, it's a quick read, but Ingo Swan basically gets taken by these two secret agent dudes, and they look like clones of each other. Basically, they're like so identical, and they take him to this underground facility, I think in Washington D.C. And they don't tell him what to remote view, but they say you need to remote view. And then he does this remote viewing thing, and he says, am I remote viewing the moon? He basically remote views the moon, and he realizes it, but they didn't. Anyway, if you do remote viewing, you're not supposed to know what you're remote viewing. That's why I mentioned that. But that whole thing is so weird. It almost looks like the dudes that took him are like Men in Black.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, a lot of people experience, who have been experiencers or UFO, contactees will state maybe more of like a government agent presence in the sort of Men in Black phenomenon. But some witness this kind of like paranormal Men in Black thing experience. And that sounds like what Ingo was experiencing,
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us some more of the experiments that you have documented and you've got in your documentary.
Yeah, so we go over the experiments that Russell Targ had practiced with his whole program and the decades-long experiences. We talk about Paul H. Smith's experiences. We talk about Joe McMonagle's, where he was remote viewing the moon and seeing strange things there. Mars. Remote viewing Mars. Chris Ramsey talks about how he was learning to become a remote viewer and he got up to stage 4 of the protocols. Tracy Garbutt Dolan and how she got into remote viewing, and one of her first field experiences in testing out remote viewing, she remote viewed somebody in a part of the world that she later lived in, and she met that person, and it was a double confirmation that everything she saw with her mind's eye was real. So we showed that, and we also have Jeffrey Tarrant, Dr. Jeffrey Tarrant, who's part of the telepathy tapes. He talks about using an EEG machine, that net for mapping brain activity. And he's put this on psychic mediums. He's put this on remote viewers, and he's noticing the same pattern, that this part of the occipital lobe I think it's a left side of the brain, back left side of the brain, where you're usually imagining things, and also a creative region of the brain for creativity. This is where things ignite, and you see so much activity when these psychic mediums are doing really good, accurate readings. They're precognitive. They're predicting something that's yet to come. Same area of the brain. So I think there's like a lot to be studied still within this sphere of the phenomenon, which is the non-local consciousness, telepathy, extrasensory perception, which is part of that, remote viewing. All of that, I think, needs much more research in a academic setting, with more. I mean, if they could create a program and create protocols that were repeatable and observable in a scientific way with remote viewing, we have to get there, I think, with telepathy and precognition and all that side of ESP as well. Who knows? Maybe technology will aid in the ability for telepathy to work. Maybe we'll be doing these interviews mind to mind or something like that in the future. Just put a little headband on and we're connected.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I would be surprised at all.
Be pretty cool.
Yeah, and who is the remote viewer of Mars that's in your doc?
Joe McMoneagle.
Okay, and what did Joe see on Mars? I'm fascinated with Mars.
So Joe was given a target when he was part of the DIA's, Defense Intelligence Agency's remote viewing project. And that target turned out to be the Cydonia region of Mars. So where the 5-sided pyramid is found, plus these other smaller pyramids, and the face on Mars, the famous face of Mars, is around that area. Yeah. He seemed to think that it was an ancient civilization, about 2 million years old, believe it or not. Giants compared to humans, 12 or more feet taller. They seemed to wear clothes. They had high technology. And he thought that what he was connecting with on Mars was actually some form of artificial intelligence that was still operating, that was basically communicating with him, because these entities no longer were living. They had long passed. And I guess he was being shown things throughout time of this civilization that's no longer there, which he also thinks that civilization might be our precursors. Like, they eventually left Mars, came to Earth, and we were created, or something like that.
Yeah, I like that theory. I think that's a great theory. Is that now? How did you find this guy,
Joe?
Yeah,
I licensed that from Chris Ramsey, who runs Area 52 investigations.
Okay. Now
that's the only part of the doc that I didn't capture myself. Like everybody else, Russ Targ, Paul H. Smith, Tracy, Thomas Jane, the actor from The Expanse and The Punisher and all that stuff, Jeffrey Tarrant, all those people I interviewed myself.
If you go to CIA.gov, there's a UFO, or not a UFO, there's a remote viewing session that was done to Cydonia. Is that the same guy?
Cydonia, yeah. Same guy.
Okay, so the guy that did that, you got him in your doc.
Yes, that's
Joe. That's awesome. That's awesome. I was wondering who did that. And so the fact that you found him, no matter how you did it, I'm impressed, man, because that is like my favorite absolutely one of my favorite remote viewing documents that's available. So fascinating. Like, yeah. And then I have I've got a friend that's like one of the best like he can read body language better than just about anybody. He's that's one of the things he's famous for. And he's a psychologist.
How does he do it with his fingers?
What's that?
How does he do it with his fingers?
Oh, I don't know how he does it. He knows NLP and all that stuff. I don't get it.
I'm just joking.
Hello. All right, man, you got me. Well, anyway, he read that remote viewing and he's like, yeah, this is legit. This isn't some made up story. You can tell by the way the guy that gets excited and does all that stuff. So just more validation. Kevin Hogan, Dr. Kevin Hogan is his name, is the guy that I sent that to. But so cool. Yeah. Yeah, and that would make sense, right? With the potentially that's in the book of Enoch, it talks about these angels that fall to earth, and then they fall in love with earth women, and then there's yeah, that makes sense. I get that. Yeah, they're like, the earth women are hot. We don't care if we got to make a pact, guys. Come on, we're not going to get back into that Galactic Federation, but anyway,
yeah,
we've all been there.
Goodbye, Galactic Feds.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. Okay, so can you tell us some more about some of the other research you did with Russell Targ and with Paul and some of the other people that you've interviewed? I'm fascinated with this stuff. This is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the questions that was kind of lingering for me when I was making the doc, I don't think it's not in the doc, so it's just like little extra stuff we can talk about. It's like, do you think that remote viewing is still practiced by the intelligence community today? And everybody that I asked that said yes. Like Tracy Dolan, Paul H. Smith said that basically his customers, because he's now private, he took over the Ingo Swan school of teaching remote viewing, but he still has clients that come to him to remote view targets. Nice. And he says, some of my clients are intelligence. So, but what Russell Targ said to me at the end of the Stargate program, when they were kind of wrapping that all up, and it eventually got terminated in 1991, the press asked them if there was anything to it. And they said, no, it wasn't effective. But that's a lie, right? That's a cover story answer. And Russ says that at the end before they closed the program, the CIA sent over their own agents, and they were teaching those agents how to remote view. Mm-hmm. Now, those agents, there was a female and a male. They were very good. They were like Pat Price quality psychics, were hitting their targets really well in high detail, so on and so forth. They extracted that technique, and he thinks it went underground, like it went within the intelligence agencies, and they didn't want a third party anymore to feed money to. So I think they're still doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of documents that you can find, like declassified. And a few years ago, I found something that was along the lines of this new project that they were funding, that was still remote viewing, but it had a different name after they shut down Stargate. I wonder if I could find that again, but cool. Yeah. That would make sense too. Like you would control the narrative, and you'd be able to keep that information offline, and then people would just think it didn't work anyway. So it makes perfect sense. Now you talk about non-human communication. Tell us more about that. Were they communicating with
well, I mean, the idea that telepathy is experienced by contactees, abductees, and just experiencers has been pretty prevalent, right, within the UFO community, as well as just throughout history when anomalous things are being reported. So, Philip K. Dick wrote about a alien satellite that revolved around our Earth and close to the moon called Valus. And he said that that was actually a channeled aspect of truth that he wrote into that book. There are people that see UFOs and they get these communications into their minds, like almost like a technology that's beaming this information to their brain. And then you've got Ingo Swan's channeling session we include in the doc. This thing that he was channeling basically identified itself as an intelligence that lives around the moon. There's also, what's his name? Uri Geller. Is it Uri Geller? Yes, Uri Geller. He wrote about Spectra, which is this spaceship that is sentient, that could basically communicate telepathically. That's kind of like AI, but somehow can beam information right to our brains. Jack Sarfati talks about like creating essentially a UFO AI that eventually we're going to encounter in the future, but it has the ability to do this sort of stuff, right? It just goes on, and we just explore that in this documentary, try to talk about the fact that there is something here, right? Sometimes I can't sleep at night because I feel like music is just like taking over my brain. That's probably because I'm like going, I don't know, probably developing dementia or something like that. But I sometimes wonder, am I picking up signals or something?
Right.
But there's people that talk about being interfered with electronically or with radio frequencies. The Havana syndrome, that type of thing. This is all like some kind of technology that's being used and broadcasting. Although that's a malevolent sort of technology, it's still hitting people and affecting their brains, right? So I think there's a lot to explore there. And we do that in the documentary.
That sentient ship is what kind of signals is it sending, or any information on it, like how old it is, where it's from, what its purpose is?
Yeah, well, if we're talking about what Ingo Swan was encountering in the channel session, it's supposed to be ancient. We're talking thousands or something like that of years. Spectra, Valus, these are all supposed to be like ancient technology, but not man-made, right? It's supposed to be something from elsewhere. And it kind of goes with the whole idea of a von Neumann probe, theorized. Von Neumann was a Manhattan Project scientist that theorized you could build a sentient robot that could be launched into space. It could self-replicate. It could build upon itself and improve itself over time, and kind of conquer the stars by sending out more and more probes as it goes. How do we know some UFOs aren't based off of this kind of technology, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe grays are like androids that are made for that sort of purpose, for the mission to study other intelligent life like we are around the sun. And they're basically printed out by the craft. Who knows, right? Like, yeah. We don't really know the answer to that question that well.
Oh man, could you imagine if spacecraft actually 3D printed grays. That's wild, but I could see it, you know. I mean, heck, look what anyway, yeah, that's pretty awesome. Now, what else did they find on the moon? Like what else, what are these other AI things you're talking about? That's, I got to hear about that. Like, do you think it's artificial, the moon itself, the research you've done?
I mean, I've done docs about stuff that's happened in NASA space history. I think we've probably talked about those in the past on your show. I think there is something on the moon that's anomalous, like structures that are ancient, that have been photographed, and UFOs that have been photographed, and video or DAC motion picture footage has been shot during the Apollo missions. But I don't know if the Earth is hollow or artificial. You know, there's a tribe in Africa that says that the moon, there was a time where the moon wasn't in the sky or something like that. Isn't that true? I can't remember.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's several tribes that talk about the time before the moon. And it does have a lot of really mysterious anomalies. Like what if it's the original ark?
Oh yeah. Like brought us here, that type of thing. I'm down.
Yeah.
Who knows?
You can't
Could
prove
be.
to me that it isn't. Right.
Yeah. I'm open to that idea, but of course I would need proof to take it on board fully.
100%. Absolutely. Now, with the research you've been doing, what is the most incredible thing you've discovered with your most recent documentary?
That psychic abilities seem to be real, you know, and that it's just overlooked by mainstream society. I think, like I said, there has to be more of a controlled study of it in an academic setting for us to, you know, if they start bringing in remote viewers to Harvard or Stanford again, actually Ed May still does the psychic testing over at SRI. And I just don't understand why it's not international news, that it's something that we don't have. Like imagine people were going to university to become Wall Street, you know, business moguls. Why can't they also go to university to become psychics? I think that would be cool if we had that as a standard in our reality.
You think there could be some kind of cover up at the top levels to prevent that in as many ways as possible? Because if we did have our intuitive abilities maximized, it would be a lot more difficult to run a political shit show. As a metaphor.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, maybe that's the purpose. They want you to be dumb and less aware of your own abilities so that they can control you better, right? Program you through your phone and through your computer and social media and all that stuff. It seems to be that is the modus operandi, but I'm hopeful that, like, you know, documentaries and stuff like this can peel back that layer and have people be more interested in this stuff so they can take that journey themselves and try and learn it. I guess that's the whole purpose.
So when they make contact with these non-human entities, whether it's artificial intelligence or synthetic intelligence, and sometimes these hitchhikers, or you get this hitchhiker effect, have you had the hitchhiker effect personally?
I have not made contact with non-human intelligence. I've never tried a CE5. I'm just interested in this stuff, and I don't really open myself up to that because I don't want to, like, what if it's not a door you can close? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And the CE5 protocols seem to be very psychic oriented, where you're sending out, message through your mind and focusing with other people. Does that seem almost like some of the ancient cultures and certain seances and certain practices where they would attempt to communicate with other intelligences besides themselves?
Yeah, 100%. Every culture has kind of reported some version of that. Dr. Edgar Mitchell in the doc talks about samahi, which is a expression for epiphany, a psychic epiphany that takes place when somebody becomes all-knowing and understands that we're all connected to the same thing within the universe, right? Which he experienced apparently when he was in space. And that comes from like basically the Indian traditions like Hindu and Vedic texts. So
yeah, nice. Well, I'll tell you, there's so much going on right now with the UAPs and the news and the disclosures. What do you think about that video that showed that Tic Tac looking craft that got shot by a Hellfire? Do you think it's one of ours, or do you think it's extraterrestrial?
my opinion is that was a soft target. It looked a lot like a balloon that was being popped by like a $100,000 military asset, in my opinion. Like it looked like it kind of just went through and kept going. Other people see that it like absorbs the attack or the blast. I didn't see that. I don't know. I just saw an object go through another object and looked like a popped balloon to me. And then some. The only thing about that again is like it looks like there's 3 objects that come out of it afterwards that are in a triangular formation, but
Yeah,
I don't know. It could be debris from that puncture, and it just so happens to look like it's in triangular formation. I don't know. What do you think?
well, I think it's definitely one of ours. And I think that it was some type of exercise that was going on and they shot at it. And I thought those 3 things that broke off might have actually been like decoy drones. So I don't think it bounced off of any force field or anything like that. I don't think it was an alien craft. I think it was a military exercise. But
Yeah.
I do like what you said about the balloon, because didn't they shoot a missile at a balloon a couple years back?
Oh yeah, that was off the coast of North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a huge waste of money too. It's like, why wouldn't you just use bullets? Like, don't those aircraft have some kind of machine guns or something on them?
Show of force, man. Come on. They gotta do something with their toys.
Gotta use those missiles every now and then. Come on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I want to show off some of your work here real quick, but I also wanted to show this to people. If you haven't seen this yet, this is actually the remote viewing session that was done. And this is actually from the CIA's website. So it was approved for release back in 2000, but they did a Mars exploration all the way back in 1984. And several years later, shortly after actually, is when Total Recall came out. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of this remote viewing session that they did. So
yeah, it's true. There is a civilization on Mars, that's for sure. They're like mutant humans though.
Yeah. Yeah. And it kind of reminds, what's that? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
And it's like a corporation runs their society, and they don't want you to know that they found like alien remnants underground on Mars and stuff like that.
Yeah. And there's a pyramid on Mars that Arnold gets to at the end where he turns on the button and it rebuilds the atmosphere and the technology. They say the pyramid's about 1 million years old. But when you read this remote viewing session, to me, it's describing what happened to Mars, because it talks about this comet, like this massive planet that's moving like a comet. And then it talks about how they're actually off Earth exploring other places to try and find a new place to live. And they're in like these chambers that are keeping them alive, and they've still got hope, but they've been down there for a long time. And then I think that Joe asked him, he said, "How can I help you?" Because somebody told Joe to ask them, "How can we help?" And they said, "You can't. We're just waiting here. we got to keep hope for when they return. But then you read about certain scriptures in like the book of Enoch. And once again, I mean, and then Mars itself, folks, I mean, did you know that there's in Cairo, it actually stands for Camp of Mars. The original tongue, Cairo in Egypt, is Camp of Mars.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Dude, that was where they set up camp after they traveled from Mars to Earth.
That's what
Giza Plateaus, Camp from Mars.
Yep. Hello. Absolutely. So anyway, that's my theory and I'm sticking to it, but yeah, this is really cool. And and your docs here, this is what I wanted to pull up your docs. Here we go. Boom. Share screen right here. Look at this. This is awesome. 24 documentaries since 2015. And you take people places that they may not expect to go, and you present the information on both sides a lot of times, and I really appreciate that. But you've done some great documentaries, and I'd love to have you back on to talk about this one.
Pascagoula. Yeah, that's a fun one. I traveled to the UK to interview Philip Mansell because he wrote like 4 books. I think still writing books about the Pascagoula incident. And he's so well-versed in that event and those men, Charlie Hickson and Calvin Parker. So he convinced me to interview him out there, traveled out there, he invited me into his home, set up shop, did the whole recollection of the whole story. It ended up being a 4-part docu series originally. So 1 hour each episode, and we cover each aspect, each person, Charlie Hickson, Calvin Parker, Maria Blair, and then Philip Mansell himself. But it was released as one whole doc if you just want to watch it in one big crazy go. I'm fascinated by all these different stories that are from this genre of ufology, and that was a really fun one. I think it's a credible abduction case. I suspend I allow some of the stuff to be made up too. With every case, there's always the chance that people are just making something up. So try to present a little bit of that in the docu series too. But I think it's up there with like the Betty and Barney Hill case, Travis Walton, those types of Lonnie Zamora, like a lot of these cases where there's trace evidence, there's multiple witnesses. There was like dozens of witnesses, and we show that in the docu series, that saw UFOs all around the Pascagoula River and Mississippi at the time. So something was happening for sure. It's just these guys talked about being taken.
Wow. Man, I've got some close friends that have pretty high-level jobs or have had high-level jobs in the military and aerospace. And when they share with me off air what their experiences are like with what they think could be ETs or demonic or interdimensional, whatever, they get freaked out. They get really scared. And they have one person is a submarine, a retired Navy submariner, and he hasn't came out with his name publicly. That was we ended up becoming friends, and I haven't heard from him for a while. And he said he was getting pretty, some health problems. So I hope he's still out there. Then another friend of mine that's done a lot of work with aerospace, he's had almost identical experiences, and they scare the hell out of him, man. But the submariner
scare the hell out of me too.
Yeah. And the submariner guy said the only place that they didn't take him was when he was actually in the submarine. That's why he loved being in the submarine so much.
Interesting.
Yeah. Very, very interesting, because they would take him in the barracks too.
That would be. Who is this? Not Terry Lovelace. No, he was Air Force. You're gonna have
No,
to tell me.
Terry's great. I remember Terry's. I haven't talked to him in years, but his testimony is pretty fascinating.
Totally.
Yeah. No, this I'll send you a link. We did a video. You can listen to his testimony. He had a submariner. He had a separate thing for retired submariners, and I think he shut that down too, which was just talking about what it was like to be in the Navy as a submariner. But yeah, when he came out, he didn't want to give his name publicly, but so similar to my other friend that's in aerospace. It's pretty remarkable, because I think that this stuff we could probably date back hundreds of years potentially with other people.
That's amazing. I would love to see. Yeah, send me that link. I want to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm equally as excited to see your new doc, man. I can't wait to see it. Folks, The Psychic Phenomenon. I'm going to do a screen share of this again real quick. Check it out. Bada bing, bada boom, bada bang. Hello. Oh yeah, this looks good. And I'm going to
drop a link for your people.
Please,
so
absolutely.
They can, follow some of my future exploits. And if they want to watch the Puerto Rico doc, or I've got Being Taken up there in shorts, they can just follow my YouTube channel, Occult Journeys. Hey, y'all.
Boom. This is another one of my accounts, so I'm subscribed to my other account as well. We're there, folks. Subscribe, hit the bell, be well. And I'm going to put this link in the video description box. So what are you working on next?
Working on riskier project, something that's a bit more controversial.
Nice.
So we'll see how that goes. And then some other UFO stuff. I'd like to get another boots on the ground research project, maybe head out to Puerto Rico again. That would be cool.
Oh yeah.
Still lots to be uncovered there. But who knows? Maybe we'll end up in San Diego, buddy.
I hope so. There's a few places I want to take you to out there as well. Darcy, man, it's great to talk to you. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a beautiful evening.
Likewise, Rex, man. Always a pleasure. You're the man.
Right on. Folks, I paid him to say that. All right. Be the change you want to see, everybody. Thank you.